What is the biggest misconception single people have about marriage?
Ooh, I would say it is the Cinderella setup, the happily ever after, the Disney movie fairy tale, what we were kind of brainwashed to believe from like romance movies that marriage actually is. And it literally, I won't say it's the opposite of that, but it is not that. It is like a very, very small percentage of the romance and the fairy tale. Now, if you are intentional with your choosing, and if you are getting married for the right reasons and to the right person, then there can be a lot of romance and fun and fire and all of that. But life be life in. And I think a lot of single people rightfully so have romanticized the idea of marriage, and I say rightfully so because in our culture, in American society, marriage is very romanticized. We don't ever talk about the true like principles and the foundations that need to be in place in order to have a healthy marriage. And so I think the only conversations are romanticizing it, and this fantasy of this Prince Charming that's going to come along and, sweep you off your feet and pay all your bills and, make your life better and happily ever after.
Yeah.
But the happy doesn't necessarily last ever after on its own. It takes a lot of intention and time and work for that happily ever after. It's not just, an automatic thing. And I think that's the biggest misconception.
I agree. How much, because as I hear you talking about this, how much of our life should we share on social media where you maybe want to be a little vulnerable? Not so much of airing your spouse out, but just kind of showing the humanity side of your life because it's just so easy to take a picture and be like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
everything is great. But do you think you maybe should have a little transparency online or that should totally be behind closed doors?
I think it depends on the person. I think for me or you, with the work that we do and the lane that we're in, I think it's kind of disingenuous if you are, positioning yourself as this thought leader in the relationship space, but then can't nobody know anything about your relationship. That to me just doesn't make sense because of what we do. I don't think that anybody owes anybody anything in terms of because the internet has made us feel like we are entitled to everything, every detail of your life. And I don't think anybody's entitled to anything outside of what you want to give them. But when you put yourself in this space, if I was a fitness coach, people would expect to see me working out or at least talking about the workouts that I'm doing or, the meals that I'm making. Like people would expect that because of what I do. So because I've been in this space of this relationship space since literally 2012, 2013, and people have seen me go from struggling single as hell to dating, engaged. They've literally seen the entire story. I think that I would be doing myself and the people who have supported me all this time, I would be doing like a disservice to talk all this talk and then kind of leave people hanging. So I think that it is a personal choice. I don't think anybody owes anybody anything, but depending on the decisions that you've made in terms of like the work that you do and the profession that you're in, I think that kind of opens the door for people to at least be curious. I think that you have to come up with your own filter though, because depending on your relationship status, if you are married, if you have kids, your story is not just yours, right? It includes other people. And so I think that we do have to be mindful of how our sharing can affect other people. And that's something that, for me and for a lot of women, that is not something that we're used to considering, where you might have a partner or a spouse that isn't like sharing all their business on social media and don't necessarily want you sharing all their business on social media. So I think you have to be mindful, considerate, but come up with your own filter. And for me, the filter is I'm not going to share anything that I don't want to be questioned about.
Mm.
So I can't share something on social media and then I got an attitude if somebody asks me offline about something that I shared online. So you have to be mindful that these are real people. Sometimes we hit upload and we just think, okay, it just goes out into the moon and the stars and the sky. And then somebody in real life asks us about something we posted online and we're looking like, How do you know
Hmm.
that? Well, you didn't told all your business. So it's just important for you to be mindful of the impact of, what you're potentially sharing, but it's your business. So share as much or as little as you feel comfortable being questioned about.
Mm, I like that. Yeah, because I don't know if you know too much about my story, but I was married for 15 years, just about 15 years, and went through a divorce.
Mm,
Hence, scary to remarry, right? So I was doing this before with the relationship coaching, but then all of a sudden, here I am going through a divorce, and I was like, so there's people in my church that's like, so what kind of hope you giving us? Now you getting a
mm,
divorce. And I was just like, oh man. So I felt horrible. But what I did on the back end was since I was already doing this kind of coaching and social media, I was like, well, you know what? I'm just going to announce that I'm going through a divorce, that because I felt like I owed that to the people who followed me, who supported me. So not only did they see the good times, but they see uh, the end of it too.
mm-hmm.
So I just kind of felt like I owed that to them, opposed to me just popping back up online like, "Hey, I remarried," and they're like,
What happened to the that is, I mean, that is, it's reality, right? It's reality that every relationship is not going to last, and your credentials, your degrees, none of those things is a recipe for success, like a guarantee that this relationship is going to last forever. And I think if you are in this space, and especially if you're in this space for the right reasons and you really want to help other people, you naturally know that you have to help yourself as well. And one thing that I've definitely learned from having my platform is you never know who you can help just by sharing your story. Like, I'm sure after you started, sharing your truth, people came out the woodworks who either needed help or could relate or could offer help to you. And so our story, and a lot of times our pain, the messiness of our story that we want to keep hidden, those are the parts that can really help other people. And so I think that when we put ourselves out there, and especially when we put ourselves out there in any type of position where we're either in a leadership position, a coaching position, a teaching position, or just like an influential position, we owe it to the people who we say we want to help to really help them even when we're hurting.
yes, I love that. Yes, that is so true. And even to a degree, well, it wasn't funny, but looking back now, it was like once I announced that, there was people in my DMs already, and I was like, I wasn't putting this out there to
For
let you
that,
know that
yeah.
I'm available. I was just like, okay, that wasn't the reason. I wasn't looking for a sob story, but sometimes you
You
just,
don't know what you're gonna get with it. Yeah.
yeah, you just never know. So we talked about the biggest misconceptions single people have about marriage, but what are some misconceptions about marriage that you in your personal life had to unlearn?
Ooh, biggest misconception that I had to unlearn. So, where do I begin? Um, I think, well, I will definitely say that I'm not talking about other people's misconceptions with my answer. Like, I definitely had that misconception as well. And I can't even necessarily say that I have an excuse for having that misconception. And I say that because prior to me getting married, back in 2000, I was engaged in 2009. Did not get married, ended that engagement, called off the wedding. But in 2011, 12, I started a education platform called the Single Wives Club for single women preparing to become wives. And so after that failed engagement, I realized that I was not ready to be anybody's wife. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Like, I was not prepared. So I had already gone through this life experience that taught me that you don't just go and get married and then you just ride off into the sunset. Like, I knew based on that engagement, I knew that being a wife was a responsibility that I need to prepare for and that I was not ready for. So I knew that. I knew that. I had read all the books. I have taken classes. I have done therapy. Like, I have done the things with the realization that marriage is going to be work.
Mhm.
And I married the man that God sent me to marry. I didn't just like, I know that the man I was engaged to before, I had no business even knowing this man. I know that. I
Mhm.
know now, I am very confident that the marriage I am in is a marriage that God set up for me to be in.
Hmm.
And even with me knowing that, even with me being madly in love with my man, even with all of that, it is still hard work. It is not, and it's not hard work because of anything other than life is just life. It's hard work because I am realizing something new about myself every single day. At this big age, I'm almost 40. My husband just turned 40. And at his big age, he's still realizing and learning things about himself every day. And so here we are, two individuals on our individual paths, trying prayerfully to keep our paths in alignment. That is not easy. And I'm talking about two people who want to do it, two people who are in it, two people who are dedicated, two people who are invested, and it's still not easy. And so I see every single day why the divorce rate is what it is. I see it every day. And then you add in kids in the mix, and baby, the decisions that you got to make on a daily basis, it is overwhelming and unbearable at times. And so I think for me, and for everybody, the big just ha ha got you moment is it literally is the opposite of what we have been led to believe that it is at every turn. So the fairy tales set us up in one way, but then just the way that we date as Americans kind of set us up for failure too, because we are used to, okay, this didn't work, I'm on to the next. Like the way that we've been dating since 14, 15, 16, however long you've had boyfriends and girlfriends, that like hamster wheel of just, okay, on to the next, having sex with the next person, on to the next, like that psychologically sets us up for failure. It sets us up for getting out of these marriages. And I do not believe that you should stay in an abusive situation. I don't believe that you should stay with anyone who has abandoned you. Like, I don't believe that you should be sacrificing yourself for this marriage. I don't believe that, me personally.
Hmm.
However, I believe that the way that we have been raised to date leads us towards divorce because it makes us feel like everybody um is interchangeable.
Hmm.
Everybody, is replaceable, and everything is not necessarily things are not necessarily worth working through.
Hmm.
So I think all of that kind of sets us up for failure. And that to me is why, resources like this, conversations like this are so important because we are just setting ourselves up for failure by not being honest about what marriage really is.